10.9 million babies dead. Not from war, not from famine, not from disease, from baby formula. Nestle, the company that brings you Kit Kats, Nescafe and Hot Pockets, the world's largest food company, worth over $300 billion. But behind the cheerful brands and chocolate bars lies one of the most evil marketing campaigns in human history. This is the story of how Nestle convinced millions of mothers to stop breastfeeding their babies, and how that decision killed more children than most wars. In 1867, a Swiss pharmacist named Henry Nestle created baby formula. His intentions were pure. He wanted to help mothers who couldn't breastfeed, to save babies who were starving because their mothers had no milk. And at first, it worked. Formula became popular across Europe and America. Sales exploded. The company grew into a global giant. But by the 1960s, Nestle had a problem. Birth rates in wealthy countries were dropping. Women were returning to breastfeeding because doctors said it was healthier. Formula sales were falling. So Nestle's executives looked at a map, and they found their next market. Africa, Asia, South America, developing countries with millions of poor mothers. Mothers who had never heard of formula. Mothers who breastfed because that's what mothers had always done. Nestle saw an opportunity, a massive, untapped market worth billions, and they launched one of the most aggressive and deceptive marketing campaigns the world has ever seen. Here's how the scheme worked. Nestle hired saleswomen, dressed them in crisp white nurse uniforms, and sent them into hospitals across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. These milk nurses looked like medical professionals. They walked the halls of maternity wards, they visited new mothers in their hospital beds, and they had one job: convince mothers that formula was better than breast milk. They told mothers that formula was scientific, modern, advanced, that it would make their babies healthier, stronger, smarter. They said breastfeeding was old-fashioned, primitive, even shameful. And then came the genius part. The milk nurses handed out free samples, just enough formula to last a few weeks. But here's what they didn't tell the mothers. If you stop breastfeeding and use formula instead, your body stops producing milk. After 2 or 3 weeks, you can't go back. Your milk dries up. So when the free samples ran out, mothers had no choice. They had to buy more formula, or their babies would starve. This wasn't marketing, this was entrapment. But Nestle's evil genius had a fatal flaw. Formula requires clean water. You mix the powder with water, boil it to kill bacteria, use sterilized bottles, follow exact measurements. In wealthy countries with clean tap water and education, this works fine. But in rural Africa, in the slums of Jakarta, in villages without electricity, there was no clean water. Mothers mixed formula with river water, the same river they used for laundry, for bathing, for toilets. Water contaminated with fecal bacteria, parasites, disease. And because formula was expensive, costing up to half a family's daily income, mothers diluted it. One can that should feed a baby for 3 days was stretched to 2 weeks. Babies were drinking contaminated, watered-down formula. The results were catastrophic. Diarrhea, malnutrition, dehydration, infections. Babies died by the thousands, then by the hundreds of thousands. One study found that babies fed formula in areas without clean water were over 10 times more likely to die from diarrhea than breastfed babies. In Pakistan, the risk of death in the first month was 21 times higher. A researcher estimated that in 1981 alone, at the peak of Nestle's campaign, formula caused 212,000 infant deaths per year. That's more than 500 babies every single day. Nestle knew. Internal documents later revealed they knew formula was dangerous in areas without clean water. They knew mothers were diluting it. They knew babies were dying. But they kept selling. In 1974, a British organisation published a report called The Baby Killer. It exposed Nestle's practices, accused them of causing mass infant death. When a German publisher translated it with the title Nestle Kills Babies, Nestle sued for libel. They spent 2 years in court, and they won the case. But the judge said something remarkable in his ruling. He fined the defendants a tiny amount, just 300 Swiss francs, about $400, and then he warned Nestlé. He said the company must fundamentally modify its marketing practices to prevent its products from becoming lethally dangerous. Even the judge who ruled in Nestlé's favor knew they were killing babies. In 1977, activists launched a boycott, the longest-running consumer boycott in history. It spread to the United States, Canada, Europe, Australia. Millions of people refused to buy Nestlé products. In 1978, the US Senate held hearings. Senator Edward Kennedy grilled Nestlé spokesperson Oswald Ballarin. "How can you be responsible for infant deaths?" Kennedy asked. Ballarin's response was chilling. "We cannot have that responsibility, sir. How can I be responsible for the water supply? I cannot help it." Read that again. Nestlé's own representative admitted they were selling a product that required clean water in countries without clean water and said it wasn't their problem. In 1981, the World Health Organization created the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes. It banned formula companies from promoting their products in hospitals, from giving free samples, from dressing salespeople as nurses, from giving misleading information. Nestlé agreed to follow the code, but here's the truth: they never stopped. In 2011, 19 international aid organizations in Laos, including Save the Children and Oxfam, launched a new boycott. Why? Because Nestlé was still doing it, still giving incentives to doctors, still failing to translate labels into local languages, still pushing formula over breastfeeding. In 2018, a major study estimated that between 1960 and 2015, Nestlé's formula marketing caused 10.9 million excess infant deaths in developing countries. 10.9 million. That's more than the Holocaust, more than the Rwandan genocide, more than most wars in human history. And Nestlé? They're still selling formula, still making billions. Today, the global infant formula market is worth over $50 billion. Nestlé controls a massive chunk of it. So here's what you need to understand about Nestlé. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't incompetence. This was a calculated strategy. Find vulnerable mothers, convince them formula is better than breast milk, give them free samples until their milk dries up, then sell them formula they can't afford to stop buying. Nestlé knew mothers would mix formula with dirty water. They knew mothers would dilute it. They knew babies would die. And they did it anyway. Because in the end, it was profitable. Nestlé's spokesperson said it himself. How can I be responsible for the water supply? The answer is simple. You can't sell a product that requires clean water in countries without clean water and then pretend you're not responsible for what happens. But that's exactly what Nestlé did. For over 50 years, activists have fought. Boycotts have spread. Reports have been published. Laws have been passed. And babies are still dying. Because Nestlé's evil genius wasn't just the marketing. It was the realization that if you make enough money, you can get away with almost anything. Even killing 10.9 million babies. The next time you see a Nestlé product, remember this story. That chocolate bar, that coffee, that bottled water, it's all built on the bodies of millions of dead children. And that's the evil genius behind Nestlé.